Three, two, one. Hi, this is Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Family Heritage Stories. With me today is a hero that you're going to hear about, this guy, Verdi White. Verdi, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
So we alluded to the hero thing, so I'm going to kind of just jump right into this thing. You, for a long time, had a pretty interesting job.
I did.
What were you doing?
Well, I've had a couple of very interesting jobs, but the most sort of recently longer term job was in law enforcement, Homeland Security, for about 25 years.
Whoa, that's a couple years. Without sounding silly, what in the heck possessed you to do that? Did you have a friend, a neighbor?
I had a relative that I grew up with that lived down the street that was a Salt Lake City police officer, and that was my only real exposure to law enforcement. But he was a very interesting person to talk to, and it just seemed like it was something that I could do. Mm-hmm. And that I wanted to do because I really wanted to find a way to serve people in a way that of being able to de-escalate and help reduce conflict. That was kind of the way that I looked at it.
Okay. Well, you and I talked a little bit earlier, because let's get real. I mean this in all politeness, but usually, getting stopped by the police is just this side of, going to a dentist's office. It's not a good day. No. But usually it's something that you guys can help, because let's get real, they're at their worst. And you brought up an interesting thing that I'd never thought about. Okay, police officers are actually known as something else.
Yeah, they're peace officers. And they're known as that because the idea is that you make peace, that you de-escalate, that you take chaos and conflict and settle it down into something that's manageable, that can be worked with.
Now, you did that in a very incredible way, with something, I have to admit, you're the first person that I've ever interviewed that has been a hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what in the world entails that, and you got to tell me how in the heck did you get into that part?
One of the reasons why I was able to get into that work is because I became a member of the state, essentially SWAT team.
Oh, wow.
And part of that whole thing of SWAT and special emergency response and so forth has to do with attempting to be able to talk to the people involved, and again, to de-escalate it so it doesn't have to go into something that is where force has to be used.
Right.
So that's the idea.
And let's get real, there's a lot of tensions in the world right now, and so it's not just police, but because I interviewed one other gentleman in your field, and he said scariest, but some of the most dangerous things were domestic abuse.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to people out there that you've used in your field to help de-escalate tensions?
Wow, that's a great question. I believe that you have to at some point look and see, what is my role in this conflict that's going on, and can I acknowledge that, and then can I pull myself out of that so that that can bring the tension down, so that a reasonable response and reasonable discussion can be had.
Yeah, because I wonder, with regard to a lot of those cases that you've been in, were there any similarities between, the various hostage cases and such?
A lot of them involved alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Or drug usage, and where a person was under the influence of something and they were not in their normal sort of mind, in their rational mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what'd you do? Have to just wait them out? Were they kind of before they fell asleep, or what kind of?
If you could put them to sleep, that's great. In other words, if you could talk enough that maybe they could actually relax, and if they went to sleep, that would be great. Yeah. Didn't happen.
Didn't happen. Okay, I'd ask.
But they did come down. In other words, when their nervous system, when they're really agitated, they did come down to where you could have a conversation with them. And once you get to that point, they will be actually mostly compliant, because they recognize, okay, this is not working for me, that this is not going where I want it to go, and at some point they can actually rationally make a decision to calm down and maybe surrender or do whatever it is that you want them to do. Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me asking this question, but have you ever been shot at?
I have not been shot at, but I have been in where people have had guns pointed my direction.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind when you're doing that? Because I don't know if you were the one with the person with the badge at the time, or if you were just a bystander doing this. But what kind of is going on there in my little police officer's mind?
Knowing that my safety actually involves being able to be calm
Okay.
in that environment. In other words, where I do not react out of some kind of sort of either previous programming of myself or how I would react, where I could actually just recognize that I have to be calm in order to be able to get through this. And once you get to that point, you can be in chaos all around you, but you can actually be calm within that. That's where your safety is.
I love that. That's very cool. So basically, try not to let the things around you,
Right.
mix things up.
Right.
Now, the name of the show is Family Heritage Stories. And so everybody comes from somewhere. What does heritage mean to you?
Heritage means to me what I received from previous generations. And it's the whole picture. What is it about where I came from that influences me now? And so heritage to me is a very important thing to have if you're fortunate enough to have something that was really, good that happened to you, which most people, that in my experience, have had good and bad, right?
Sure.
But it is something that it helps you kind of remain grounded and know who you are.
So, do you have any stories? I'm just going to get to my favorite question. I admit it. Okay. I'm not supposed to say you have favorites, but this is my favorite.
Okay.
Tell me a story about one of your grandparents. I don't care which side, grandma, grandpa, just pick one.
Well, my grandpa, Mahanrai Morinkamer White, what's quite a mouthful for a name. He was a farmer. His dad was a farmer. 1865, had 100 acres of sagebrush and turned it into a farm. And then his kids, which was my grandfather, came along, and he used to have me come down a lot and have him come down and plant his tomatoes, work in the in the field, right, getting into the dirt, and I really, that stuck with me because I know that was a benefit to me to have done that kind of work and to be that close to the earth and to be planting things and harvesting things. So it was a sort of a farm environment, right? That's what I grew up in.
Very cool. Now, where did you, and I realize you got different branches and such, but what country did your people come from?
Well, on my grandfather that I just mentioned, his side came from England, came from Bosham, England, and came across and came to Salt Lake City, like roughly 1865, in that range. That would have been Edward and Eliza White, farmer, cook, lived in a dugout. I mean, I don't know how they survived.
Yeah.
Doug, I don't know how they survived back then when you look at the kind of environment they were in. But they did, and they somehow prospered, and then, had their kids, which would be my grandfather, and then he had my dad, and, coming down the generations.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, I got to say, and hopefully nobody gets mad at me, but the travel brochures from back then, it's like, really? I mean, it's a lot of sagebrush and such. To be able to take 100 acres, I mean, that's a nice sized land.
Yeah, it is.
And take all that stuff out and make it farmable?
Yeah.
And then try to figure out how to get water to it?
Yeah.
In a desert?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you had to dig a ditch by hand from Mill Creek, about 2,700 east.
Okay.
Evergreen Avenue, which is like, 3,400 south roughly. A ditch all the way from there down to where his farm was, which was roughly about below 20th east.
Wow.
Which is that's a long ditch. And just straight across nothing, right? Just a ditch to get water to be able to farm that. I don't know how they did that. Physically, I'm not sure how they did that. That's crazy. But anyway, it's amazing.
Well, that's the other thing. It's interesting. I mean, because sometimes we think our history is, all over the world and this, that, and the other. And yeah, it could be. But what's it feel like when you are standing on the line? Because I don't know what's there now, but, if you were to go to that area and basically say, this is where my grandfather, my great grandfather, I mean, this is where they personally dug the ground. What kind of legacy does that mean to you?
Well, that they survived, that they actually survived, which I wouldn't be here had they not. And I just, again, I'm completely astounded, and I wonder of how they did it. So I'm grateful that that happened, because I like being here.
We like having you here.
I like being here, right? And so I'm very grateful to them for that.
Well, and you've got a book here that's written down a whole bunch of history. Why save it? I mean, nobody cares. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I find we have a reunion every year for our family, and I find that the young kids actually have an interest in these stories, which is, to your point, what you're doing here with this. It's like they're astounded. They go, "Really? That's what happened?" They're very interested in it, even at a very young age.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, you were in law enforcement for a long time. The technologies that from back then, and it's not that far along, but but the technologies from when you were first starting to what the technologies are now. What's some of the big differences that people would go, geez, you had to do this, that, or the other?
Oh, as far as you're talking about in the law enforcement area?
Yeah.
Well, you used to have a patrol car with a little light on the side, right? That's when I started. That's what you had, and then that over time, you have better lighting. You have computers in the cars. There's a lot of technology in the cars. The cars are more they're better in a lot of ways, because they're built for this, for that job. And so technology has changed a lot. You can do a lot of, and video cameras and things, both in the car and on the officer themselves, and all this stuff. So there's a lot of transparency out there that you didn't have. Like when I first started, there's a lot going on that anybody can see. So.
Well, I'm not even sure that my grandkids would know what a fax machine is. So it's just like, just saying.
Mine don't, guaranteed. They don't know what a fax machine is.
So let's kind of go there. What kind of stories do you want your grandchildren to know about you, but also about your grandparents?
Okay. Well, I would like them to know that I took a little different philosophy, maybe philosophical approach to my work, perhaps in some, but I wanted to let them know how I got to that. So I'm going to tell you a story about a traffic stop I made out on I-80 westbound, right out by the Twilla line at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
So there's no traffic really on the road. There's really nobody much working even, except for a few of us that are out at that time. And I made that traffic stop because I saw the car was going kind of slowly and kind of weaving around in the lanes. So I turned on the lights and pulled over, and I positioned my car so I could be protected from any traffic that wasn't there yet, but ongoing traffic. And went up and I asked him, I said, I'm coming to check on how you're doing, because I've noticed you're driving pretty slowly and your car is weaving around in this lane here. I'll make sure you're okay before we get you going on tonight. May I see, please, your driver license and your registration, which he, after kind of fumbling around a little bit, presented to me. I took it back in the car, and when I got back there and I contacted dispatch, they said the plate on that car has been stolen. Doesn't belong to that vehicle. So I gave them the information I had on the driver license, registration, and it was kind of quiet for a little bit while they did the research. And then they came back, they said, 354, which was what my call sign was, you have a person there that has an outstanding bench warrant, a huge one, for homicide out of Louisiana.
Oh my goodness.
Multiple homicides. So they're looking for backup remember, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and most everybody's not around. So we're sending a Twilla deputy over, getting things going while they're talking to me. So I went back up to the car And I said to the person, I said, I think you know what we have to do now, because I've just checked your driver license, and I know that there's an outstanding bench warrant you have to go in and take care of. And so he got out of the car. He was compliant with me. I put handcuffs on him, put him in my car. And then when I got him in my car, I got back into the driver's seat, and he said, "Officer," I can't remember what he called me. He said, "I want you to know, when you go back up to that car, there's a .357 Magnum sitting on there right by the passenger side over there. And when you came up the first time, my plan was to shoot you dead."
Wow.
He said, "But the reason why I didn't do that is because you treated me with respect when you came up to talk to me." He's a Southern gentleman, by the way. "You treated me with respect. That's why I didn't do it." So now I'm a brand new, probably a year or two into this, maybe a year. So a brand new trooper in that sense. And I decided at that time, at that point, that I would treat people with respect as much as they would allow, always. That would be the first default. It would always be that, and not judge them by whatever it is they're doing, right? To go there, because I felt like that they're my safety, and it was better for trying to keep the dignity of another person so that they would react and talk in a more rational way than taking that from them as well. So that's what I did the rest of my career. That's the way I approached
Saved your
my
life.
job. Saved my life. Yeah.
Wow. I got to tell you, you are the epitome of police officer being a peace officer. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
I mean, with military, they hear "thank you for your service" a lot. Let's get real. Police officers, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
What is something that, for lack of a better term, the civilian community can do to help respect and honor peace officers?
Well, let me take a little different direction for a second. What the police officers can do is to take a little bit more of this kind of approach some of these guys, they work in where they're not going to get the respect, that they're just not going to get it, and lots of very dangerous things happen and hurtful things. So taking the tack that I'm going to first try to be reasonable and to be decent with people, and then and seeing where that goes before that's going to help, because that's for how we can help on the law enforcement side. On the citizen side, they have to look at the police officers being an extension of themselves. They are just an extension of the public, and they've been given a job to do, to uphold the law and to, help with public safety and so forth. And so they have to then appreciate that if they maybe they get pulled over for by an officer, that, okay, he's doing, this is what I've hired him to do. Literally, they've hired us to do that. And so then maybe just the way that they converse with the officer will make a huge difference, because we're just talking about people here. We're talking about people just learning how to communicate with each other, and things go better when that happens. And you don't need to use a lot of force. You don't need to use you don't have to be, things just naturally work better. It's like having the conversation we're having right now. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and that's the thing that I've looked at. I don't care, how people, what color their skin is, or this, that, and the other. If you just sat down and talked where you were listening to understand instead of listening to respond, you find out you have a lot more in common than you think you do.
So that might be a good response.
Yeah.
To sit down and then do exactly what you've talked about, to see if you can understand what's going on, what are the dynamics. And as you do that, then you're in a position where you can literally, you can have an amicable and even a reasonable conversation with people, which is going to give you a better outcome ultimately.
Oh, well, yeah, I remember one of my interviews was with one of your compatriots. You know, he basically said our job is to help put the pause button on you when you're doing something stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, so I love your approach of de-escalating.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to any man or woman out there that is thinking about joining the police force?
Well, it's still an honorable profession, and it needs professionals in there. So it's not, if you're going to go into that for any other reason other than you want to help bring order to chaos. You want to help de-escalate. You want to have a better society to live in. You want better neighborhoods. All those things. If you go in there with that, you can have a career and feel really good when you retire. When I retired, I felt great about my career, and I was not burned out, which can happen. Because you get in, you know, that's not the environment that our men and women in law enforcement have to work in. It's not always conducive to sort of low stress and low,
No,
you know,
not
it's
even.
like, it is, there's that aspect to it. But what you want to do is be able to have a career that when you're done, you can go, I love my life. I love my career. And you have to decide how you're going to do that, how you're going to make that happen.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this is the wind-up question that I did not give you in advance because usually it's pretty esoteric, okay? So, but you can have some fun with this, okay? So, to me, if stories are not passed down from generation to generation, they're lost. And a lot of the time, you know, I mean, the old way is to do it in book, new ways to do it in video. But the reality is all of our lives, for lack of a better term, leave a mark.
Yeah.
How do you want to leave your mark?
Wow. I want my mark, I want to be that I love my life. I loved every minute, even the stuff that was not fun, that I love my life. That I am, that I want to bring more peace to the world by having peace myself, and then and acting and communicating in a way that would be conducive for someone else to have that as well. That he was a peacemaker. That he was a good person. That he worked hard to reduce suffering in the world. Those kinds of things. What I want to be remembered as.
Well said. With another entry into Family Heritage Stories and Verdi White, I'm Doug Jessop. We'll be right back. Another close. With another entry into Hero Salute Stories and Verdi White, I'm Doug Jessop. We'll be right back.
Do we want to talk about what you're doing now with your holistic health care?
You're
That was like
Sure.
a perfect transition into everything you just said that you want to be remembered for what you're doing right now.
okay.
Okay, no problem.
And
Okay.
we didn't talk about that picture.
Oh, I didn't know it was there. Okay, so let's go to the picture first.
Okay.
So Verdi, one of my favorite. Well, I can't say that because I got a lot of favorites. Okay. There's a feature in the show that basically says everyone has a story, but objects with stories, now those are treasures remembered. So we've got a little object over here that I think has some kind of story to it.
Yeah.
Tell
This is the home that I live in. It was built in 1948, and my dad built it.
Wow.
So I'm living in the same home that I grew up in. It's on that 100-acre sort of what used to be sagebrush on that piece of property. It's sitting there. And I've raised my family. They all grew up there, my children, and then I have now grandchildren that come and go. So this is something that is pretty solid right in my life.
Yeah.
In other words, I've been there a long time. Now, I lived away for 10 or 12 years, but I'm back in the same place that I started.
So this is the very land that your family got.
Yeah.
With a land grant.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually signed by the President Ulysses S. Grant. Isn't that cool or
Right.
what?
That is cool. It's very cool. Yeah.
With another Treasures Remembered and Verdi White, I'm Doug Jessop. We'll be right back. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
So you've served the community pretty heavily as a peacemaker. So first in the police officer thing, and then you've also worked with folks struggling with drug and alcohol addictions and everything. What are you up to now?
Well, when I retired from law enforcement, I wanted to continue to do something that would be of value so that in the community, and because I wanted to feel good about that. I mean, I didn't want to go play golf, every day. That's not something that I wanted to do. I grew up next door. When I grew up, my uncle was a pediatric psychiatrist. He's a pediatrician turned pediatric psychiatrist, and we had a lot of boys my age, and he would take us around and talk to us a lot. He's a great teacher in human behavior and how to be a sort of a good regular person, right? And but he was a very conservative doctor, and he used a lot of very conservative, before he ever went to anything where even medications, he'd say, take a salt tablet or do this or that, the other. He used a lot of conservative techniques to be able to do his work. So I remembered him when I retired, and I said, you know what, I think I could go in and do something. I didn't want to go in the medical profession. That's another 10 years of training. I mean, I was beyond where I was. But so I went into what was called natural medicine, which is holistic health. And so I went back to school and studied that for a couple of years, a bunch of different courses in that. And when I got done with that, I was interested. I thought, I can open a clinic because of what I've learned here. And so I did. The clinic 10 years ago, and I still have it today. And I do some very, very basic lifestyle, very easy treatments for helping people have a better life. That's what I do.
And what's it called?
Integrative Wellness Center.
And how do people get a hold of you?
801-554-6290.
With another Utah success story and Verdi White, I'm Doug Jessop.
You're okay with throwing out your phone number?
I don't have to, but
That's the number I have for the clinic.
Pam's going to be.
That's
do you
Yes,
want
it's the only
a
number I have.
website? I don't know if you have a website.
I don't do it.
Okay, then don't worry about
I
it.
do.
Okay, no problem.
All I do is referral. Everything I
Okay.
do is referral based. I have no website. I don't
Okay.
do anything like that, and I
Okay.
have no employees.
Are you looking for more clients?
I mean, I take people on from time to time, but that they're from referrals. That's how I get my
I'm
clients.
wondering if do you want that on there?
Maybe not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do not list name or address. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so last question.
Yeah.
Are there any questions I haven't asked you that you want me to ask you? Any other grandparents? Anybody else like that?
We did tell about Hurricane Katrina when you were directing phone.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, okay,
Whoa,
so-
hang on. Okay.
Okay, we've got that, and
Rolling?
and the Olympics.
Okay. So now, Verdi, you've worked on a couple big projects, and you've been just as we like to call it, kind of hiding the okay. There we go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. So, Verdi, you have been doing what we call burying the lead. Okay. You worked on 2 pretty dang big projects that I didn't know. One had to do with this little weather event, this Katrina thing.
Yes.
Okay. And the other had to do with the other little rings, Olympics, Okay. You got a dish. What's going on with Katrina first?
Well, with Katrina, I was fortunate to have a really good leader of our state, John Huntsman Jr. And I was under him. I had the responsibility. He gave me the responsibility to help build a command that could receive people from Louisiana or from any other places in the area there that had been affected by Katrina, because he wanted to host and bring in people and help relieve the suffering of these people. They had nothing, right? So I was able to get together, and I had great people working with the National Guard and the Health Department and public safety and all the different groups of people, and the private sector, which is a whole nother deal, because amazing what they did. I'm still amazed at what people did, what they were willing to do. And we set up a place to house some visitors from Hurricane Katrina out at Camp Williams.
Oh.
And we had all the dorms, and the Red Cross came with, for food, and you had, all these different entities. You had churches, the LDS Church, Catholic Relief Services, there's a whole host of just non-governmental agencies that came in to help, organizations that came in to help. And we were able to, over a period of about 7 weeks, take care of, I don't remember the numbers, it's between 1,000 and 2,000 people.
Wow.
Help them get to their homes, a relative, help them get a job, help them find a place to live. And it was an amazing coming together of people from different sectors of government and the economy to make that happen. And I've got to be the incident commander of that, which was quite amazing. I got to be able to see so many amazing things that people do when the chips are down. Somebody needs help, what they do, they come to the rescue. That's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. So, Utah also has had the honor of hosting a number of world events, but there's a biggie, the Olympics.
Yes.
And, we're going to do it again in a couple of years. I don't know if
we
I'll
are.
be around, but hey, but you were there. Tell me, what role did you play?
Well, the Olympics was an amazing organization. What happened there was nothing short of amazing. I was the Deputy for Homeland Security at that time for another great leader of ours, Michael Levitt, a great governor, and I was able to be part of the Public Safety Command along with the Commissioner of Public Safety, who was the sort of ended up being kind of the operational lead of that. And lots of federal agencies coming in. See, the interesting thing about Olympics, it's amazing, Doug, is we have federal government, we have state government, and we have local government, and they all have their own responsibilities. And so the question always is, who's in charge? This is not a problem in other countries often because they don't have these levels that we have. So it was amazing to have people come in from all these federal agencies, FBI and FEMA and alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and then also state and local Salt Lake City Police Department and all these different people that they would come in and find a way to work together to secure the Olympic Games. And it went very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Salt Lake City at that time, there was no crime, literally no crime happening in Salt Lake City. It was just the craziest thing I've ever seen because of just the presence of that much support. So the Olympics are a wonderful event. I'm glad that they come in. There are some challenges associated with it, particularly with public safety and communication and all those kinds of things, but they'll figure it out when it comes back in a few years. It'll be figured out.
Any other questions, stories? Okay, now Zach is going to take over for a second here, and I'm going to lead for a second so you can talk freely. We're going to do 3 little things. One,